Hello, TSF family. We wanted to start off by saying thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast and for your hard work to love yourself more and for your feedback.
Can you believe it's been 3 years that we've been doing this spiritual fix, and it has been such a beautiful labor of love for Anna and me.
We have loved doing this work. We've loved hearing from you, and we love exploring ourselves and each other alongside our listeners.
We wanted to put out the call for 3 ways that you can help support us to support you.
1, we would love you to leave us a review on iTunes or follow us on Spotify.
2, drop us an email and let us know how much the podcast means to you.
And 3, you can donate monthly or even just once to our PayPal patronage.
Every little bit helps, and we are so grateful to those of you who have donated already. Thank you.
You help make this podcast possible.
Thanks, y'all. You can go to our website, www.thisspiritualfix.com, for information on how to pledge, as well as to email us. Hello and welcome to episode 3 of season 7 of This Spiritual Fix. Today we are starting a special series that is close to my heart, talking all about your inner villains, which is a mashup of the Enneagram, human design, and the primal wounds. Enjoy.
Hypnosis, mindfulness, meditation, past life regression, Archetyp, spirituality.
This Spiritual Fix. 2 mystical mamas hacking the self-help game.
With Anna Stromquist and Kristina Wiltsey.
Hey, Kristina.
Hello, Anna.
What are we talking about today? This is your baby.
This is my
working on.
Baby. How many years now? That was
3.
at least 3 years. It's been 3 years. This is my baby, y'all. So imagine that if there was like more than 2 parents that would like give genetic information to a thing. Imagine if you combine IFS, the primal wounds, Enneagram, human design, and just the work that I do in general with people in terms of like processing and like the process we've talked here, access, awareness, processing, and remembrance or insight. Imagine if you combine all those things into one system, because that is my complete neurodivergence that's going to find too many patterns between too many things and be able to cross-reference everything to be like, look, it all fits into this one system. I have created, with the help of many collaborators and a whole cohort of people, a system that it's called the Inner Villain Transformation System, if you want to call it like that. The basic idea is that when we have maladaptive behaviors, right? We call it so many different things. So you can be like, oh, I'm such a people pleaser, or oh, I'm such a catastrophist, or oh, that person's so entitled. Like, it's a lot easier in a lot of ways to see kind of maladaptive, toxic, or red flag behavior in another person. But the basic idea of this is that I found that after all the work that I've done with everything, that there's 9 main categories. They are equivalent to the 9 centers in human design, the 9 types in Enneagram. There's 9 main kind of pathways that we can go to make ourselves more self-loving. Sometimes if I were to be like, hey, Anna, I'm going to just like completely change my personality overnight, right? You would be like, what are you talking about? Like, how can you do that? Like like IFS says, our personality is very complex. There's a lot of different things. The 9 separate tracks of this work, it's designed to go from what can be the most difficult version of each of these 9 villains, which is like movie villain type-esque, all the way to an evolution of the most self-loving form of what this person can be, and what each of us can be. So instead of saying, I'm going to become a better person, it's like, hey, I'm going to get better at change, or I'm going to get better at how I move my energy, or I'm going to work on becoming more self-loving by looking at how I separate myself and my sense of belonging, right? Okay. That they kind of 9 key themes that go throughout all of the villains, and each of them is specializing in a specific area of self-development and a specific area of awareness. What I mean by awareness is like, becoming aware of these villains inside of us and becoming aware of the connections between them is an incredibly valuable thing in my experience. So I'll give you an example. If someone came to me and they said, hey, I'm experiencing an imposter syndrome every single time I walk into a business office, like I find it difficult. Mm-hmm. And then I would ask them, oh, are you also a people pleaser? And they would be like, yeah, how did you know? I was like, let me guess. There's also other times when you're a perfectionist. And they'll be like, how in the world did you know? Because being a people pleaser, a perfectionist, and an imposter doesn't really seem like they're going to match, right? Like, why would anyone necessarily think that those were connected, right?
Yeah.
And yet they all exist on the same arc. And that's what I found over and over and over again, right? Is that there's a bunch of different positions. And if someone resonates in one of them, they're going to likely resonate and recognize themselves in all the other positions, right?
Okay.
Because the villains are effectively pendulums in which you swing back and forth. And we're going to talk a little bit later about what it is. But for the sake of this, it's like sometimes when you're really stressed out and things are going absolutely shitty, you end up as the worst possible version of this villain, right? You're lashing out at everybody. You're destroying everybody. And then there are other times when everything feels okay and you feel better and you're like, oh, I can be self-loving in this area. Like I actually understand myself, right? So I'm going to tell you guys the story of how this kind of ended up developing over time. It first started off with when I was with people, especially if they were in a state of hypnosis or guided meditation. All of a sudden they would say something like, I am broken, I am evil, I am unlovable, I am whatever. And I would hear these, I started calling them negations, negative affirmations, right? And I was like, where the hell is that coming from?
Right.
I was like, how is there like, and I was shocked by it. Even though most people have heard a limiting belief, but it was so definitive inside of their body. Like it was just so, and it was so hyperbolic, you know what I mean? Hyperbolic in the mean, like I am broken, right? And I was just like, isn't that crazy? And then some people would have 3 or 4 of them. I am broken, I am evil, things along those lines. So I started pulling on those threads.
So there was similar, like, let's say 9 different negations that kept coming up.
Yeah, at first there were 5 or 6 that kept coming up because there's 3 or 4 of them that are pretty covert.
So what are they? I'm unlovable. I'm evil.
I'm broken. I don't belong.
I don't belong.
I'm fragile, right? Like I'm not enough. I'm alone. All of those things, right?
Okay.
And those are the negations that first came up. And so I was like, okay, well that's well and good, but like I feel like there's something more that sits behind this. And then I just started pulling and pulling and pulling, and then I went into this channel, this really deep channel, and that's when the actual first original villains started to show up. And those were the ones that were equivalent to movie characters that I knew. So Regina George was one of the first ones that showed up. Darth Vader was one of the first ones. Nurse Ratched showed up really early as well. The Nothing from Michael Ende's The Neverending Story was one of those early ones as well. And so I was like, oh, these negations, I can all associate them with characters. I was doing this all before I even had any idea of what this looked like, right? So I was working with enough clients, I was doing enough things, and I decided I wanted to run an inner villain cohort. And at that time, there was only 9 villains. They were the pinnacle villains, as you'll come to be called. They were pinnacle villains, and I was like, okay, great, these are pinnacle villains, and we're going to do a course on this, right? And so the very first iteration of that inner villain cohort that we did, everybody associated with a pinnacle villain. There was no sub-villains. There was no nothing like that. And the hero was up to everybody's own discretion. And by that point, I had solidified each of the 9 into a character from a movie. Those were the 9 that we had. And when we went into that cohort, again, it was a lot more open-ended and everyone could kind of do what they wanted to. But I knew that there was something here with being able to identify kind of maladaptive behaviors and kind of categorizing it and seeing it as almost an internal part, but more than an internal part. That was the thing that I was noticing, was that internal family systems was good, but the part itself was too small. These were universes. There was like a planet in which there was somebody who was ruling the planet, and there was all these foot soldiers. The foot soldiers were the protective parts, right? Mm-hmm. The foot soldiers were the protective parts. All the people in the dungeons were the exiles. And it was beyond a cluster. It was beyond any of the things that IFS said. And I was like, okay, so every single minute I'm sitting here and just like new information is coming in. In the middle of the cohort, I think maybe just before the first week was when they showed me that the 9 centers in human design actually correlated to the 9 villains that I found. Right?
Say that one more time.
The 9 centers in human design actually correlated. So if you go back to our human design episodes.
And the 9 Enneagrams.
And the 9 in the Enneagrams, right? So it was like the 9 in the Enneagram and the 9 centers in human design, especially because I was in the middle of doing deconditioning with some of my clients. Deconditioning is a process in human design in which you recognize that you've been conditioned in one of your centers and that your job is to decondition that center. And it's very vague. And if you go look online, you're not going to find a lot of stuff on deconditioning the centers. But it's really important work, because if you are someone who's not meant to make promises and in your entire life you've been ambitious and made promises about all the things you're going to do, like you need to decondition that from yourself. Like, you know, you need to look at that differently. So this is a relatively shortened version of how this actually came to be, because it's a whirlwind of a tour, right? I learned so much from running the cohort, and I hope that the people who were in it also learned a lot as well. But one of the things that needed a lot of strengthening in that cohort, which I will admit is the hero, is like, how do you actually invert these things, right? We talked a lot at the end of the cohort. We spent a lot of time just discovering the villains. And at the end of the cohort, I was like, okay, so now you know who these villains are. Now you need to invert them. And that was something that I knew from the beginning, was the process. That was the terminology that was going to be used, was invert. Invert being downward dog, right? And invert being, you got to get your head, you got to get your hips above your head, right? And you have to psychically get your hips up, spiritually get your hips above your head. Because otherwise, if you can't change your perspective or your perception of this thing, you're not going to be able to shift it. And so what we did in that first cohort was we did a lot around perception. And okay, if you're the nothing, which means that you're going to be immobilized by any action, you need to invert that, which means that your job is just to go and create the shit out of something and have no care about if it's right, if it's wrong, if you should do it, if you shouldn't do it, if you should, and just go and finish it all the way. Mm-hmm. And that was how you inverted it. And so at that time, it was very much so like, hey, I'll give you an ideas for how you invert these, but this is how you do it. And so then a fair amount of time passed after that cohort where I was working with all my clients in some one way, shape, or form. And I got some really key people who were just outwardly displaying one type of villain. And I was like, oh my God. Like,
what do you mean you got these key people?
They were like case studies. They were
in your own therapy.
In my own work.
Your own coaching work.
In my own coaching work. I was
work.
getting case studies. Okay.
I was just wondering where this population.
People who were doing incredible work to invert their villains and to like all of a sudden discover these new aspects of themselves. And it was just absolutely incredible to me. I was like seeing it work. I was seeing it work over and over and over again. And then it became apparent to me that I wanted to do an oracle deck that was going to act as like effectively a transformation deck, like that people could use to help them move these along, right? And I was like, well, this makes so much sense because each one of these, 9 can be a card in this deck, but that's only 9 cards. So maybe I'm doing processes for the rest of the cards. I don't know what it is. So I got a friend of mine who's an artist and a designer, and we were like, we're going to make a tarot deck. Right. And we laid out 2 of them. One of them was the inner villain one, and one of them was this other one. And I was doing the other one first.
What was the other one?
The other one was a word of the day tarot, which I love. I hope I'm going to be able to make it someday. It's just like a really fun little one. It's like really crazy, obscure words, and you can do anything. Anyway. So I was doing that one, and she said, I have so much more energy for this other one. Can we please do this inner villain one? And so I was like, sure. I can respond to that, right? Like following my strategy. So I started writing down the 9 villains. And then before I knew it, each of the villains had sub-villains, had 3 sub-villains underneath them. Right. And then we would get so far, and all of a sudden I'd be like, shit, there's another row. There's another layer. Thing. There's another layer of this. And it kept revealing itself and revealing itself and revealing itself. So by the end, there are now 9 by 6. So there's now 56. 54. No, 54. 54. 9 times 6 is 54, everybody. There are now 54 villain cards with, there's 54 cards in the deck. So there are now 63 cards in this deck. And 9 of them are power cards. Power cards meaning that they are specific processes, which is one of the things I thought would be in the original deck. And the rest of them there is a pinnacle villain, and then there are 3 sub-villains that show up as each of the corners of the drama triangle. The successful antagonist is the persecutor, the wounded child is the victim, and the covert is the rescuer. And then there's a hero card and there's a legend card. And we're going to talk about here in a second how people move through these arcs. It can be used just as a tool to be like, hey, I'm on this arc. I'm going to go look at all these cards and I'm going to see how I can move through this arc, how I can move from the pinnacle villain over to the legend, and like what are the hero's practices and things along those lines. So it's used as a shadow work game effectively.
I love that.
But it can also be used in collaboration with other people. So if we did some really fun iterations of the gameplay the other day when each of us picked, like somebody picked the righteous bully, the other one was like the faithful. Faithful is the covert on the divisive immortal arc, and they had to have a conversation about where to move, like what kind of house they wanted to move into, and we knew the system well enough, and you can learn it pretty well, and there's all these prompts on the cards or in the guidebook about it, in which you basically try to have an argument from these two perspectives.
Oh, like role play.
It's like role playing, or it's like role playing. It's like improv almost, with like trying to go into these characters, right? And like, and working to do it. And like, and sometimes you can do it like when you're in advanced play, you do it between 2 arcs, and sometimes you just do it inside an arc. Like, it was funny. We were talking, we had this day-long meeting, and there was this moment in which after we had done the gameplay that somebody had a really strong opinion about something. The righteous bully is all about opinions. Somebody had a really strong opinion. And so the righteous bully, in their worst form, they basically are like, my opinion is the only opinion. It's the right opinion. And for me, I got super triggered because somebody was like, well, this is the way it needs to be. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it doesn't need to be that way. And I immediately fell into the covert form. Like I was the sacrificial, like, I guess I could do that. And then I started being the wounded. I was like thinking I was the one that was a problem. And I was falling all in that arc just because somebody had a really strong opinion and they were like not taking no for an answer. With my cards, yeah. But it was fine because that's a part of the dialogue, but it was just like, it was funny because we had done role playing before that, and then we actually had a real life situation right after that in which I found myself being thrown into an arc and having to like move my way out of it. So that's what the gameplay looks like, in which you're basically trying to move your way through an arc. You're trying to move your way from a pinnacle villain all the way to the hero form of whatever it is, right? Like that's the job, and you're going to be jumping all over the place depending on die. We're kind of working out the game mechanics, but on moving the die around, because it's there to help you form community by talking about having difficult conversations with people about shadow work or about your own work, and having an opportunity to open up to people. Or you can do solo play where you're just working on it yourself. What were the questions that you had?
I had one question. So we talked about how basically you think of it like a coil, like a rope. You twist it. And then when you let go, it unravels. And that can kind of be an allegory for, some people hitting rock bottom with these villains. And then it naturally unfolds. Or before we get to the rock bottom, which is what most of us do, is we start to untwist it to go into the momentum in the other direction. Yes. My question is it normal that as we do this, we go back and forth, rotate, yes, counter rotate, counter rotate, five rotations this direction, 4 in the counter rotation? Like, it seems like just because you move it in the other direction doesn't mean you're guaranteed to stay in either. That's exactly it. So this is the thing that's so brilliant. I want to actually put in directly a conversation that Anna and I had, and we're going to show you, because this is going to shed some light on the movement of the arc. Anna and I had a really interesting conversation because one of the things, again, like I said, the system is always evolving, and it's finding that it's helping people even now, but that in some circumstances, I'm still trying to figure it out. And so we were talking about the arc earlier and the mechanics of the arc. I originally saw it as 2 stars. And there's a triangle circling around 1 star. And then as soon as you invert the polarity of that, like as soon as you, like basically you have the pinnacle villain, and then you have the rescuer, the victim, and the persecutor circling around that. So
you're kind of in a stable place until things get really bad, and then you become the pinnacle villain. But in general, everything you're doing is surrounding that villain kind of mindset, and that at some point you have to flip the polarity in order to be able to flip it to the legend. And then the legend has its own polarity and things like that. But Anna unlocked something for me earlier, and I want to play that for you. So we're thinking of it like this, where it's this understanding of the fact that we're trying to change the spin of who we are. We're trying to change the polarity of how something is showing up in our life. And the reality is that just like a pendulum can swing in many different directions, so too when you like wind yourself up on a swing, sometimes you can feel like, hey, I made so much progress, and then you let it go and it all of a sudden, it starts spinning the other direction, and then you get to the end of that and then it spins back. This is a work in progress in the sense that we're trying to decondition something that has been deeply conditioned to us in many, many cases. And so the hero is is not a constant work, but it's a continual work. You're always working to do that, and you're always working to strengthen your legend. You're definitely going to go back sometimes. It's not a completely stable place to be the legend, but at least you can understand what that universe looks like, and you have the mechanisms, very specific mechanisms, very specific cards and processes to be able to move to that other side. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, what was the question?
Can we just do a fun little game real quick?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I have the Enneagrams. I have a hero and a villain for each of the Enneagrams. In popular culture, I asked it to narrow it down to Disney movies.
Okay.
Because hopefully the majority of people listening can identify with Disney movies.
Yep.
And then talk about how they relate to your thing.
Okay.
Okay, so the first type, what is that again?
The first type is the obedient critic.
And what is its best version?
Its best version is the equalizer, which is the remover of obstacles. They've gotten rid of hierarchies. They don't need anything, and they're kind of like, they feel comfortable and they feel like they belong.
Okay, so does this make sense? The hero example here is Elsa from Frozen.
Let it go. She was completely obedient to her parents and everything that they said in order to be able to maintain her thing. And for her, being the equalizer means that she actually feels like she belongs in herself. Yep.
Okay, tell me about number 2.
The 2 is the vengeful martyr, which is the equivalent of Anakin Skywalker or Darth Vader, more likely Anakin Skywalker. And that is the vengeful martyr, and the legend of that one is the nourisher.
Okay, so the hero here they're giving as an example is Olaf from Frozen. Willing to melt for others.
I would say that Olaf is more of an internal child. He's got this and he actually grows up between the movies.
Okay, I haven't seen the second one.
Yeah.
And then the villain is Mother Gothel from Tangled.
Well, Rapunzel. She's very, very codependent because she requires Rapunzel's hair to be able to stay youthful.
And she smothers with love to manipulate and stay.
She's almost a divisive. So Mother Gothel is more of a divisive immortal because she constantly makes Rapunzel fearful of the outside world.
Oh, you're right.
And she's dependent on Rapunzel to make her immortal.
Okay.
Right? And then Olaf is probably almost the healer, I would say, actually, in some ways, because Olaf has to embrace death because he's a freaking snowman. Right? And he literally dies in the second one. Right?
I didn't see the second one.
Yeah.
Thanks for running it. Just kidding. I'm not going to see it.
He comes back to life.
Don't worry. I'm not going to see it anyways. Okay. The third one
is the Vane Controller, the Regina George, as we would call it. And then the Vane Controller, the other side of the legendary version of the Vane Controller is the Inventor.
Okay. It's saying here that the hero version is Hercules from Hercules.
I could see that being the case, especially because I feel like Hercules in the Disney movie was very vain, was very image oriented.
And then he switched and became what?
He became a hero that was actually helpful.
And not just image-based hero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the villain would be Hans from Frozen. He masks his true motive to gain power and praise.
Oh, he is absolutely so concerned with appearances, yes.
Yeah. Okay, number 4.
The 4 is the Eternal Child, the Norman Bates or the Peter Pan. And his the Eternal Child, the other side, the legend of the Eternal Child is the Traveler.
Okay, this is saying, the Traveler makes sense. The hero is Ariel, the Little Mermaid.
Yep.
And then the villain version is the Scar from Lion King.
Yep. Because
he doesn't seem like the Eternal Child, but he has that entitlement piece.
He has the entitlement piece. I think he also has. I never saw Mufasa, so I don't know if the canon of that. I feel like in some ways he's kind of divisive immortally, again, because like when you see so many of these villains are divisive immortal, because he says, the divisive immortal, he says like, oh, hyenas, you deserve to have as much as everybody else do. And if you're loyal to me, then I'll give you everything that you want. And when he gets into power, basically everything dies.
Okay. All right. Number 5.
Number 5 is the evasive expert, which is the Hannibal Lecter or the Dr. Jekyll. And the legend of that one is the integrator.
Okay, so this makes sense. The hero is Belle.
Yep.
From Beauty and the Beast.
Yep.
And the villain is Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove, which I didn't see.
I didn't see that either. If I had to think of an evasive expert, I can't think of one off the top of my head. But it definitely makes sense, Belle, because Belle basically has to adopt the dark passenger, which is the Beast.
What about the bad guy, Aladdin, in Aladdin?
Jafar. Oh, yeah.
Could he be?
Yeah. Because he's not at all
expert?
emotional. He's like a complete...
evasive expert.
And he's
condescending.
And condescending, and also he's very condescending. He thinks that he's superior to everybody, and yet he's always hiding a motive he's always hiding his dark passenger.
Okay, number 6.
That is the divisive immortal. It is the Voldemort. I also call it Dracula because Dracula kind of has another one of these aspects, and it doesn't have any IP. It's in the public domain. Dracula is. The divisive immortal is the pinnacle villain, and then the legend of that is the healer.
Okay, hero here is Mulan.
Yes, I could see that.
And the villain is from the movie Wreck-It Ralph. I don't know this. King Candy. We have enough examples of villains, I think.
I think we have a lot of examples of villains that are divisive immortal. Yep.
Okay, type 7.
The type 7 is the hungry shapeshifter, and it was originally called the Loki. And its legend is presence. It's basically the sun. The sun meaning S-U-N. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hero here is Rapunzel from Tangled.
I could see that. I could see how Rapunzel would be the hero, because other than the fact that I feel like a better one would be, who would be a Disney princess who like Brave, the girl from Brave, because she kind of always wanted to take on she wanted to be able to be free, and she wanted to take on a different persona than she normally did, right?
Yeah.
Jasmine could also be one, maybe, because again, she like didn't want to accept the life that she had. Hungry shapeshifters are primarily concerned with attention seeking.
Okay.
And they're very unlikely to be okay with whoever they are showing up as. So, yeah.
Okay, and the villain here is Tamatoa from Moana.
Tamatoa.
He was the shiny object chaser.
A little sad little glad ball. I'd rather be shiny.
Yeah.
Like a da 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 da. Golden boot. So it's interesting because, yeah, I could say that Tamatoa is more, I would say Tamatoa is very attention centered. So that does make a lot of sense. Yep.
All right, number 8.
The 8 is the righteous bully, originally called the Thanos, still called the Thanos. Because it is so indicative of having a righteous justification for doing awful things in the world. Like they have a very strong opinion. That opinion makes it so that they're willing to cut down anybody in their way. And you come all the way through to that one, and you get the channeler. For
hero, you have Moana.
Yep.
And the villain is Ursula the Sea Witch.
It could be Ursula the Sea Witch, or it could be Te Kā.
Uh-huh.
You know, I was thinking Te Kā from Moana. Oh no, Te Kā is the nothing. Go ahead. Okay, yeah, I could see, because Ursula believes that she's the best one possible to rule the sea.
She asserts dominance to reclaim control, is what it's saying.
Yep.
All right,
Okay.
and number 9.
The number 9 is the invisible destroyer. It's often the arc of addicts, honestly. It's the head center in human design. I haven't said that for the other ones, but you guys can go and listen to all the parts as they come up as we do that. And I'll give a list in the show notes. The invisible destroyer, it's the nothing. Michael Ende's never-ending story, The Nothing, because it likes to destroy imagination. It basically destroys any kind of creation. The legend of this arc is the architect.
All right, saying here the hero would be Pocahontas. Because it says mediates between worlds, harmony seeking.
Maybe.
Okay. And then Lotso is the villain. Lotso was that teddy bear in Toy Story.
Oh God, I don't even know that. Yeah, I would say.
You know it when you see it. Look.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. I would honestly say that this is the 9 in the Enneagram relates to peacemaking, which when it's in its worst form as its pinnacle villain, it basically it's constantly trying to stop action from happening because it's so caught up in its own head that it's not able to do that. And that's where I was like Taka without her heart became just this like vicious monster who basically stopped anybody from being able to pass. And that to me is why it reminds me of Taka, right? All right, so that is the inner villain system. And I
cannot wait to learn about all of these in more detail.
Exactly. There'll be a little mini episode to follow for each of the 9 so you guys can learn more. And if you want, you can come to my website, which is www.kristinawelty.com or www.playconscious.com. And on both cases, you can sign up for a newsletter and you can get the understanding. Oh, sometimes I speak like a robot, I swear to God.
You can get the understanding.
You can get the understanding of when the Kickstarter will start because that's how we're going to do it. We're doing crowdfunding to get the first versions of the game out, but it's taken a ton of work to get where we are so far, and hopefully we're going to be launching it this fall of 2025. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, we wanted to include the conversation that Anna and I had about the arc and the different nature of the arc that we alluded to in the episode. So here you go. Here's a little bonus. Exactly, right? So imagine that there are 2 stars. One star is dark and has a tendency to be about pain and being a victim or being an abuser or being a rescuer. It's like a universe or a star system that is villainous in nature. It is not self-loving. It is difficult. It is filled with things that basically make you feel disconnected. And then imagine that in the same solar system or the same star system, binary star system. Oh my God. Let me say the accurate astronomy. There's this beautiful star, which is the aspirational view of how you can metamorphose this aspect of yourself, like your people pleaser. Like, what are you actually trying to become? Like, what is the ideal version of what you're trying to become? And the thing is that this isn't about fixing. Just like with everything in this podcast, it's not about fixing. It is about this idea that you want to become more self-loving, and you want to become self-loving in 9 different areas of your life. Every single one of us has all 9 of these villains, and we want to become the most self-loving possible person that we can. One star system is self-hating, one star system is self-loving, and we're trying to kind of get somebody to move using the hero and using a hero's journey to be able to flip and invert from one star system to another. Right? To basically change their attraction and the gravitational pull from one star to the other.
Or instead of one star from the other, what if it's just going clockwise versus counterclockwise?
Ooh, blown mind. It's something that has to do.
Venus and Earth aren't Venus and Earth the exact same size, but Venus rotates in the opposite direction?
Yes. That's so fascinating because what they keep showing me, when you invert, you literally have to change the polarity of whatever it is that you have.
And it kind of also goes into the whole Buddha thing about unwinding. Like when you stop accumulating karma or sankhara, like impurities, you just naturally unravel all your negative karmas.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
It's so perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh no, I feel like this was not the right time to say it.
No, it's the perfect time to say it because genuinely, I've been trying to figure this out, and it's so funny because Megan and I, who I'm working with this with, she's come up with so many different trying ways to show what this looks like. Like there's some sort of dynamic.
You don't jump. You just stop winding in one direction, and you naturally start to unwind in the other.
Right, and that point, that inflection point where you stop unwinding and you get to the end, that's the hero.
Right, and it's like it's like you get a rope and you twist, and when you hit your ultimate level of tension, it starts to unravel.
Yeah.
And I guess everyone has a different level of fibers.
And we can induce the hero state. That's the fascinating part. We can induce the inversion, and they keep calling it an inversion. They keep saying it's like you invert it. And then they kept telling me, they were like, the polarity switches.
That's what it is. That's totally it.
Yeah.
It's just a counter rotation.
It's a counter rotation. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of This Spiritual Fix. If you are interested in finding out what your primary inner villain is, you can go to www.kristinawiltsey.com to take the test that is linked. That's Kristinawiltsee.com. Thanks, y'all. And remember,
Humility, gratitude, acceptance, done.